if your style or your way of performing is hard to decipher by people that don't even do poetry, it might not be an effective style. Because in my opinion, I think poetry is a really beautiful outlet for accessibility, to make it accessible to people because I always say, like, poetry is a language we all speak. Like, a lot of the time we speak in metaphors and similes, but we kind of get what each other's trying to say. So if you're performing in a manner that's quite hard to decipher, or almost like a secret language in itself, then if you're trying to make a point in your poetry for it to be secretive, then hey, you've done it. But if you're doing it to be, if your intention is to be accessible to everyone, and it's not, then you're missing the mark. So whatever your intention is, if you want to come across angry, sad, secretive, open, if your poetry doesn't mimic that, then of course there's almost a conflict between how you perform it and how you want it to be perceived.
All right, okay, let's see what we're doing. I've just been mad busy.
That's fair. That's very, very fair. I've got some exciting news to tell you as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Some very exciting news. Totally like went over my head not to like email it to you or something. But I thought, I'm going to see you, so I might as well like tell you.
What is the news? What?
I have a book launch. In early April, and it's like a poetry anthology.
No way.
And I've been working on it for like ages, like too long to count. And then I signed early last year. I signed a contract with a publishing company.
Oh, no way.
But yeah,
that's so
I thought
cool.
I'd let you know.
Yeah, of course. How timely is the podcast?
Hey, it's like I knew.
Just wait for the cameras are on it.
Well, the camera's rolling.
The cameras are rolling now.
Nice.
Oh, nice. Congrats. That's
Thank
so cool.
you.
How did that happen? Did you like email them or?
Hey, the journey was long. Initially, I put my poetry out there to I put it through competitions to see if I could get it published through that way.
Nice.
Which has its advantages and disadvantages, because if you seek a publishing house in that way, they almost have like rights to your work, because they pay for it and they fully like publish it basically in their style and things like that. I did that a lot for many years, like just sending like samples of my manuscript around and seeing what would catch.
Yeah.
But I'd get the same response all the time, and it was like, wow, your work's super cool, but we're not really looking for that right now. I'm like, so I kind of like, I came to a realization. I sat myself down. I was like, Sam, if you want this, which I did, and I obviously still do, you got to make it happen. Like, you can't wait. And I felt like I was trying to wait for the right time. Like the right publishing house will see my potential. So I think I was trying to find that gap, but then I was like, maybe I should make that gap.
Nice.
So I like went out and emailed different self-publishing houses, and then I found the right one, because in my anthology there's also different like illustrations and stuff, so
nice.
I wanted to make sure that like a right publishing house was gonna like do me justice for it, and wasn't gonna like print really rubbish, inking and things like that. But
damn, wow, so cool. When's it gonna come out?
Well, the complimentary copy has already been sent home. I know. And I was so shocked, because I did it to my home address in London, because I thought, it's not going to come whilst I'm in Cambridge, surely not. And then I'm like running a pavilion meeting, so I'm like speaking to like my team, and then I get a message from my dad saying like, oh, your book's here, by the way. I said to my vice pres, continue, yeah? And then I had to leave. I need to know what's going on. So that was just a copy to see like, are you happy with everything? Like obviously it would be nice for me to actually touch and feel it and see what it's like, but I trust my parents. I was like, go to this page, check if this is the right.
Nice.
But yeah, so now it's just like I've bulk ordered copies for the book launch, which will happen on the 3rd of April.
And where's that going to happen?
At a small cafe called Route 25. They're like all the proceedings go to charity.
Really?
Yeah, they're really, really good. Like, they're very popular, run by these amazing people. But everything that they do goes to like charity. I think it's like going to like Rohingya Muslims or something along those lines.
Nice.
So when I reached out, because I did an open mic there a long time ago, I went with my brother, and it was a really cool place. Like, it was very local to my home, like 5 minutes walk, and it was very new, very flashy, but still quite homely. And I reached out and I said, hey, like, I did an open mic with you guys a while back. Now I'm publishing my own book. Like, do you guys do like book launches or capacity for that? And they were super understanding. So yeah, I'm going to actually visit there on the 27th when I'm back in London, like see the space and like how we want to arrange it and stuff like that. So it's fun.
Blimey. That's so, congratulations, that's so cool.
Thank you.
That's really cool. Oh yeah, I'm like writing a book and I just need to keep writing, and that's quite inspiring because I want to get it published one day. So
you definitely can.
That's a cool story. The biggest hurdle for me is actually doing the work.
That's fair. That's better than like when you get late and you're like, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah.
You're good. Don't worry. You're all good.
Okay. All right. Let's start. I think I can make that content if you're happy to. Are you talking about your book launch to make it in somehow?
Yeah, if it's natural, I'm happy. If not, then that's also okay as well.
Okay, nice.
I mainly was going to tell you the news, so
but you'd be happy for if it was in the podcast?
Yeah, like if it makes sense to be there.
Yeah. Let's start.
Lovely.
Hey everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with an old guest, I guess. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Sam. I'm sure if you guys watched the architecture podcast, that was me. But we're here today to talk about a different yet adjacent topic, I'd say, which is poetry. Nice.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about poetry and creative writing societies for current students and prospective students, and it's part of a series of podcasts where we're wanting to interview students from a variety of societies to show you guys what kind of things you can get involved with in Cambridge. So firstly, Sam, for students who are creative writers or into poetry readings, what is there on offer in Cambridge?
Well, there's quite a lot. I'd say it goes into sort of two categories. One is like college-based and one is university-based. So a lot of colleges will have their own writing like societies or poetry societies or creative art societies that are local to the college itself, which is advantageous in a way because you don't have to like walk very far from your accom to just like go and partake in one. But then there's also university sort of level societies which are open to all colleges. So that's where you get to meet different people from colleges, and a lot of the people that I met or that are friends, like poetry friends that we all went to UniSLAM together, I met through CUPS, which is Cambridge University Poetry and Prose Society. So that's one of the biggest ones, as well as like Blackbirds, which are another like poetry and writing society. But there's loads of like local ones as well. Like there's the PEM, which is for Pembroke's like poetry and writing society, as well as like Lucy Loves the Arts, which is also Lucy Cow's one. I run Give Us the Mic.
Nice.
Which it falls in this grey area because it's not, I wouldn't say it's a poetry society. We are registered as a society. However, we're more of like an open mic night. So every fortnight we run and I host different creative arts in the space so people can perform, whether it's their poetry, their writing, their prose, their rap, their comedy skits, whatever creative outlet you have. What Give Us the Mic is a space to showcase that, and I'd like to say a nice safe space as well. Like you can trial new things, like if you're writing something but you don't know the flow of it, like you trial it in a space like Give Us the Mic. So it falls, again, we've had also loads of musicians come as well, so it falls within a bit of like the grey area of poetry, writing and the arts type thing.
Nice. Wow, that's so cool. Quite a large variety. because there's a lot of prospective students who are watching this. Could you explain like what the differences are between the societies that are like college based and the societies that are kind of uni-wide based?
Yeah, so the college-based ones are often people from your college that will run the society. And this is not only for poetry, but this could be for any type of society. So they approach the college and say, hey, we want to run a poetry society, writing society, whatever it is. They often approve it. And then through that process, then you become like a full-fledged society. And then within that, often, not all the time though, often it'll be run within your college. So there'll be different spaces, whether it's your JCR or anything like that, where they'll run workshops or run society events there. University-wide ones are, they, like most of the time, they can sprout from a group of people within one college wanting to start a society, but then it grows outwards. So it's not just only for people within their college that can attend. So for example, with CUPS, I first got involved with them. It was crazy. I literally just went to an open mic because I saw it on like Instagram and I was like, I'm a poet, but never really did poetry things in Cambridge because I don't know, it made me a bit nervous because I wasn't studying English. I didn't know what type of poetry was Cambridge poetry. But I went to an open mic, not with the intention to perform, but just to see what was going on. And I think it was at Clare. And I went and I remember talking to people and they're like, yeah, we're from like Homerton, or we're from like, there was a guy that was studying maths that was there. Like there was loads of different people in that one space that aren't poets or aren't part of the society, just sort of seeing it. And that really made me, it made me feel quite welcome because you know that I'm architecture and then I'm going in to do poetry. So it felt a bit like, initially when I went, a bit nerve-wracking. But then when I was there, I was like, oh, there's loads of people that are also kind of in the same boat as me, which felt nice.
Nice. So like, because I really don't know much about poetry reading societies, like, are these kind of societies places where people like have written their own poetry and then they speak out loud in front of people, or are these like readings of or like poems that have already been written?
They can be both. Like there isn't a set, from what I know, there isn't a set sort of way in which you can approach poetry societies. We're pretty open societies and we welcome all people from any walk of life. So if you want to come in and read your favourite poem by your favourite writer, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to try, like I said, if you want to try a piece that you've written and not knowing the flow of it, you can also do that. So when coming to an open mic or any also like writing events, you come in with sort of an open mind to see what's going on, particularly with open mics. Like I said, when I went to the one in Cups, I went just to see what was going, like what the scene was like, but then I ended up performing because I was like, oh, this is a cool scene, like why not? So yeah, you kind of take it as you go and see if you're comfortable in that setting.
Nice.
Really.
Yeah, it's a classic. I remember going to societies and thinking, oh, no, I'm not going to talk.
Yeah. Just going there to go.
And then you end up somehow finding yourself
on the stage. yeah, totally.
Nice, yeah. There's something nice about that, like variety of unique experiences, just getting thrown into things. You were mentioning UniSLAM. Would you be able to explain what that is for anyone who doesn't know?
Of course. UniSLAM is a university-wide poetry competition or slam poetry competition. Slam poetry doesn't really have, in my opinion, a defined definition, but the stereotypical understanding of what slam poetry is, it's your very loud, almost like rap poetry.
Okay.
That's in your face. And it often, like, if people that are interested in poetry, like you watch like button poetry on like YouTube and stuff like that, where they're very expressive, that's often the stereotype that comes as slam poetry. But it's not true. When you go to UniSLAM, you don't need to perform that way to do well in it or to enjoy it. And that was so I've been to UniSLAM twice now. And first year, I went as a coach. Second year, I went as a participant in it. And it's often held in Birmingham in like the Hippodrome, which is amazing, like theatre. And it's like a week and you're part of different like workshops. If you want to like write your own book, they have like publishers that come and speak to you about different situations like that. If you want to learn how to perform your poetry, because a lot of the time people, and I met loads of people as well, and it's really interesting where they say they're a page poet. They write poetry to be read, not to be spoken by them. And I find that a really interesting concept, because a lot of the time when you read their work, because I'm a spoken word artist or spoken word poet, so I really want to hear how it's meant to be said. But I remember going to UniSLAM and speaking to one of the poets and saying, like, she was there as a reserve. And I said, like, why don't you, like, perform some of your poetry? Because it's amazing. Like, we were in a workshop together. She was like, no, like, I just can't. Like, it's not meant to be read by me. And I found it really interesting, because I was like, but it's your own work. Like, surely you'd want it to be read or perceived in a certain type of way. But UniSLAM's a really cool place where, A, you meet very, very cool people. B, you get to express yourself in ways that you want to really, and it helps you nurture you as an artist, not just you as a poet. So I found it really, really useful, all the workshops that we had, meeting different people. And then you compete. So there's different rounds as well. The logistics of it are a bit blurry. However, I know there's like different rounds, and you have to compete as like, there has to be two people doing poetry at the same time from a team. So it's like dual poetry, which is really interesting to watch. There's also like an option to do like poetry with 6 members of your team, which is your whole team. So you learn to like basically choreograph a poem and perform it. Okay. So that's really cool as well. And then by the end of it, you go to like semi-finals or finals round based on how you compete, really. And we have different like judges that come as well. Like we've had Birmingham poet laureates and really, really cool people. So yeah.
Maybe this is, I don't know if this is a dumb question. How do you, like, if it's like a competition, how does like one person's be better at someone else at reading poetry?
It's not a dumb question, it's a very valid question. Poetry in a way is subjective, like most arts. However, it's, like I said, it's based on a sort of, not algorithm, but a judging sort of list. And it's the way you perform it, it's your confidence when you perform it, it's your presence on stage, it's your writing ability. And a lot of the time, you're right, it's quite hard to judge someone's art. But especially when you're competing, I think particularly it's like, also if you can read it off script, that gets you extra points. If you go over time, like deduct points. So it's things like that. Very similar to like if you were to partake in a public speaking competition, and they deduct marks based on your presence on stage. And I remember doing this when I was like in year 9 or something like that. But your presence, your communication, your writing ability, your connection with the audience, these things are really important, and that's what you also get judged on in UniSLAM.
Nice. I'm just quite curious, do you think there's ever times where someone's like reading their poem in a way where most people can't see what they're doing and they've been misunderstood and then maybe scored a lower mark?
In what way?
In a way where they like people like they have like a method, or they have an idea of how they're presenting what they're doing, but a lot of people watching don't quite get it, and maybe they would understand if they were to hear them talk about what they were doing.
I think with poetry, in the way that you perform it, particularly also, it kind of overlaps with the way just even public speaking or addressing an audience. If your style or your way of performing is hard to decipher by people that don't even do poetry, it might not be an effective style. Because in my opinion, I think poetry is a really beautiful outlet for accessibility, to make it accessible to people through, because I always say like poetry is a language we all speak. Like a lot of the time we speak in metaphors and similes, but we kind of get what each other's trying to say. So if you're performing in a manner that's quite hard to decipher, or almost like a secret language in itself, then if you're trying to make a point in your poetry for it to be secretive, then hey, you've done it. But if you're doing it to be, if your intention is to be accessible to everyone, and it's not, then you're missing the mark. So whatever your intention is, if you want to come across angry, sad, secretive, open, if your poetry doesn't mimic that, then of course there's almost a conflict between how you perform it and how you want it to be perceived.
That's interesting. I've never heard anyone describe poetry as accessible. because of I don't know, then thinking about, I don't know, like famous poets or like the Romantic era, medieval literature. Yeah, like so. I don't know. I think poetry from like hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I wouldn't describe it as accessible. Does that make it not? I mean, we're going on a massive tangent, but but does that make it not good poetry?
I think there's a difference. There's a difference between spoken poetry, which like spoken word poetry is what I do,
Nice.
and also page poetry, what you write and what you often study in school. And you often, through those outlets, you learn how poetry is written and the technique and the iambic pentameter, and you learn about rhyme and couplets, all of this stuff, which is very valid things to learn in an academic setting. The poetry we often do in UniSLAM or in settings like it is poetry that often comes from the heart. It doesn't need to come from academic knowledge of poetry. You don't need to have studied poetry to be able to write it. So I think in a way, most poetry that people write is very valid because it comes from a place of feeling and it comes from a place of that you really care. But there's a difference between poetry that is spoken out loud and meant to be experienced almost as a performance, and one that is read or studied in class.
Yeah.
But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
I said that's the rule. No, it's just my opinion on it.
Nice. Yeah, I can feel like the English students like watching this, like getting their daggers out. Disclaimer, like I imagine we both agree that like poetry from like hundreds of years ago can also be spoken now in a very authentic way.
Definitely,
by very few people who are trained in that way though. How did you get into spoken word poetry? Because you were mentioning about public speaking.
That was my route. Like that's how I first started in the poetry world, because I did the Jack Petchey public speaking competition when I was...
What's that?
It's basically a public speaking competition in local schools in my area. So you would choose a topic that you liked, and you were judged on like different elements of how you wrote about it, how you spoke about it, how you engage with the audience. So I learned different skills, like for example, like I remember my teacher was also helping to like tutor me at the time. When you're like speaking to an audience, you kind of look from like left to right, but you linger a bit in each area. So each part of the theatre feels like you're engaging with them, that you're not just speaking to the centre, especially when it's like a round type of theatre. So it was really, really good like public speaking skills for me to learn at such a young age. But I remember, kind of long story short, I remember I got to the sort of main part where we were competing against loads of different schools, and I won that, which was like, it was so crazy at the time because I just went to do a sort of public speaking on what I felt passionate about, which was like knife crime. And I won. And then I remember my teacher right at the end, she said, Sam, you've got a really like poetic way of speaking. You should go to an open mic. I was like, what's an open mic? I was not in the poetry world. I didn't even know what that meant. But I remember going by myself to an open mic and sitting right at the back. It was like full of adults. And I was like, all right. I sat right at the back and I just watched and hoping no one would notice that I was there. I just watched different people perform, and I oddly had the same thrill that I had when I won the public speaking competition, but I wasn't winning anything. I was just there. But to be there and to see how people would perform and really like bring their writing to life was really beautiful, because the difference between public speaking and poetry is public speaking almost makes, in school, this is the way we learn it, like making fact giving more interesting. You know, it's often the topic that you're talking about is quite mundane, and the way in which you speak about it is interesting and engaging. And that's what public speaking was taught to us. But I twisted it in a way where I spoke about something that I was passionate about when it was knife crime. And then through that, I spoke about the lived experience of parents that might have to go through that experience. And then watching it also in a poetry context, they won't talk about knife crime, but they'll talk about something else they felt passionate about. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, I didn't even know this existed. And then I think a few days later, I went back to the same one, but with like poetry I'd written. It was just words, really. And I performed it, and they clapped. Actually, they clicked. They clicked instead of clapped. I was like, oh. Okay. And then I sat down, and everyone was like, oh, that was so cool. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And then since then, I've always been writing, really. And then that got me into like the performing aspect of my poetry, because I really enjoy, don't get me wrong, I love writing poetry for people to read, but I also love performing my poetry because it's performed in a way that, because I often write like a concrete poetry, which is poetry that looks in like completely different forms, and it often helps me perform. So if words are bigger, it often means like I probably need to raise my voice, or if words are smaller, it's I need to go softer or slower if the words are spread out. So it's a visual thing to help me, but also when other people read it, it's a way for them to also understand how it was written and how I intended to read it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really cool. No, yeah, I think, I mean, if you hear the author reads their poem and you get to read it as well, there's like multiple, like you get to hear how they want it to be communicated, both spoken and written, which is really cool. I was wondering, because you were mentioning about public speaking, did you ever consider doing stuff with like the Cambridge Union?
I don't actually know. It hadn't actually passed my mind. I think when I came to Cambridge, I was more poetry than public speaking. When I was in school, it was very much public speaking. A lot of people knew me for my public speaking. But then as soon as I stepped into the poetry world, I didn't really step out.
Fair enough.
Because I felt like I found my niche and I found my people. And it just worked.
Nice. And with Give Us the Mic, the society that you founded?
Yeah, I founded and I run.
And you run. Nice. Can you explain to the prospective students who are watching how not only are there societies for people to join, but like normally how there's a committee for each society and the different kind of roles there are on committees, and then how you can run a society as well as attend one, basically.
So with running a society, a lot of the roles, like the mandatory roles that you need to qualify to be a society, are often like your founder, your treasurer, so the person that will be in charge of the funding that you get allocated. In our team, we also have like a photographer, because we do a lot of events and publicity, and ensuring everyone has a good picture taken of them is a really important part of Give Us the Mic, because a lot of people want to showcase that they've done cool performances, or they're trialing things, so it's documenting it for us is really important. There's also in our team we have events organizers, so people that will help book venues and organize spaces and stuff. In different society you also have a vice president. In Give Us the Mic is slightly different because it's not a society in that way where we're running very frequent open mic nights. Like I said, it's every fortnight. So every fortnight, and we have a good relationship with Grain and Hop, which is the place that we often do open mic nights in. So it's quite linear for us, but I know different societies will have to reach out to different people if they want to do different workshops or bring in different guests. So they may need a bigger team because of the caliber or the level of things that they're doing. But if you're a relatively small society, Give Us the Mic, then you can have a small team. We also have a UniSLAM scout, which is a person that basically is a good friend of mine who comes and just kind of watches. She's more than welcome to perform as well, but she watches to see if there's any UniSLAMers in the midst, or if people don't know about what UniSLAM is. Give Us the Mic is often a place where we talk about it, and we've had collaborations with UniSLAM when I was a part of it, but also when I wasn't a part of it as well. So always including them in the conversation, because there was one person that told me about UniSLAM and I didn't even know it was a thing. I thought it was a myth. And if that person didn't tell me, I wouldn't have gone twice in a row, So it's about just speaking about it, really.
Nice. And because I imagine when you started in Cambridge, there would have been loads of these kind of societies. What was it that made you want to start Give Us the Mic?
I think something that I felt that Cambridge missed was a place, in a way, a place that was non-academic in the best way possible. Cambridge is very, very academic, and it has that reputation for being so. But I think I wanted to create a space where people that weren't from the English background could come and perform and felt comfortable and confident to do so. Because I think the atmosphere and the sort of mindset that I have when running Give Us the Mic is, even if 4 people turn up, if one of those 4 people is a new person I haven't met, like, I'm doing something right, you know? If it's reaching different audiences that I haven't met, or people that I don't know, but they're coming because they've heard of it through different things, this is a good thing. Even if they're not there to perform, like, ultimately my goal is to instill more confidence in people's creative pursuits, and to not make them feel that it's a secondary thing, like it's a side hustle to them, because the creatives, whether it's poetry or art or music, that can be your main hustle, like, as long as you respect the art that you do. So it's a lot about instilling confidence, but also creating a little community between, I say, non-academic creatives. But of course, most people, like, everyone is welcome to come.
Yeah. Well, can you expand a bit more about the difference between it being a side hustle and a main hustle?
Yeah. So for example, with me, when I first started out poetry, it was always a side thing to my academics at GCSE level, at A levels. Like, I always did it, but never as a main thing. It would be, if I had the time, pardon me, I'll add to my poetry, or I'll go to an open mic, or I'll go to this event. It was never like I put it on my schedule, I have to do it. It was like, oh, if I can, I would. But in taking it seriously, it is being almost like disciplined with yourself to say, I really enjoy this and I want to give it time to flourish and to grow. Because I knew a lot of people growing up that were amazing at, like, music or drama, and it was always a side thing to their main thing. It was never, and I'd ask them, like, why didn't you, like, pursue it? Like, you're really great. I just don't have the time. But I think it's also about respecting, like, yourself in that you do enjoy it, and it's as important as any other academic pursuit that you can do. And I think it's about giving it that respect, because archaically the arts has never been viewed in a in sort of a nice way. It's always secondary to your doctor, lawyer situation. So it's about instilling the respect that you have for your art, but also carrying it out through your routines of how you do it.
Nice, that's really interesting. And with, like, there's so many things. There's so many things I was meaning to say, and I'm, like, trying to work out which one to prioritize first. When you were talking about the academics and how people normally have their creative hobby as a side hustle, do you think like it's possible to harness that creative spirit in your academics? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So there doesn't have to be a separation.
Yeah. 100%. I think. Well, I do it. That's why I say 100%. For different degrees, it might be slightly different, because, again, I don't know how different degrees go, but particularly in architecture. And when I first started it, it wasn't very common. If anything, it didn't exist. But I use poetry as an outlet to explain. I do it in different ways, but one of them is through, I do it to explain different atmospheres and the way in which you experience space. So it can be very metaphoric, and it can be very all about, like, the phenomenology of things. Oh, nice. And poetry is a really nice vessel in how you can get there without talking about theories. Like, you can do it in a fun way. So that's one way I use poetry, as that sort of describing aspect through my architectural briefs. But poetry can also be used to break down architectural jargon that often alienates people. So that's a main sort of thing I push. With poetry, like I said, a lot of times you speak in metaphors or the similes, like you're kind of like going around the point, but you still kind of get the point in poetry, especially when you're trying to put a point across. So for example, if I'm talking about, because I'm still working with them, with the V&A, and we're working with like Robin Hood Gardens estate, which is a social housing estate that's now demolished. But as part of my work with them is to ensure that the history and story of social housing is told correctly, and is to give honor to the lived experience of people that have experienced that space and that's their home. And I wrote a poem called The Grid, and it was all about living in social housing and what that means. And it's not just a very monotonous grid. It's one of the things that I used was, if I remember it correctly, quoting my own poetry, was I spoke about like it almost being like a deck of cards. So all the cards sort of look the same, but they're all different numbers. But also, they're almost like different colourful moments within the block that you get to see people's lives through their windows. And that's a really beautiful aspect of living in social housing or council housing or any high-rise housing for that fact. I feel like I've gone off on a tangent.
No, keep going, yeah.
I'm forgetting the question entirely. Oh, putting it into got it back. So I think in architecture, you can do it. When I first did it, people were like, what are you doing? But I often think people are afraid of things that are often foreign to them or different to them because it's not predictable.
Yeah, that would be an example we were saying at the beginning when someone's trying to communicate something and the audience doesn't quite understand.
Exactly. So I think it's this idea of when there's a common idea that's pushed to you or taught to you, you see things through that lens always. But when something's different, you're like, what? Yeah. Especially if it isn't popularized. So totally, with the first example where you were talking about when you want to present it in a way, like for example, a good example of that might be if you say poetry in your own language or in your native tongue. I love when people do that. Wow. I don't know what they're saying, but it's beautiful. And I think it's the most like insane and the most like talented thing anyone can do. But oftentimes it could be in UniSLAM, it could be in any other like open mic setting. It isn't perceived well because people don't know what you're saying and people feel as if, not that you're speaking about them, but people want to be kept in the loop always. But I think there's a beauty with the unknown, and if you don't know, get to know. You know.
That is interesting, because you could argue there's a whole range of experiences of listening to someone speak poetry, but you don't understand what they're saying, but you can hear what they're saying and how they say it.
Totally.
Because you don't know everything when you're going about your day. So the fact that it's unknown isn't that crazy of an idea.
Yeah. And there was a poem that I wrote that was published with it was like Expressions of Resilience Showcase. It was like a showcase of East London talent, but it was called Mother Tongue. And because growing up, my mum's Thai and my dad's Moroccan, but growing up, English wasn't my mum's first language. And I would always go with her to like doctor's appointments or different things where we're always sort of together. And the response I got when I was with my mum was they would sort of look at me to translate what my mum's saying, but my mum's speaking English. And I wrote a poem called Mother Tongue, which was half of it was in Thai and the other half was in English. And I purposefully didn't translate it. Nice. Because I said, and one of the things in there, again, if I remember correctly, was you must learn to be comfortable with things that are foreign to you. Because I think there's a really, really big part of people that are afraid of the unknown or afraid of not knowing. But I think sometimes you need to sit there in comfort of not knowing, because there's a beauty, especially when it comes to language, there's a beauty a lot of the time as when you don't learn the language, people are like, are you speaking about me? Or no. Most of the time it's just we're trying to translate or understand how we can best speak to you rather than it's about you. So that was a really fun, I always enjoy performing that poem to people, especially at the Resilience Showcase. It was a really good, it was received quite well, but in that setting because everyone else was either bilingual or trilingual, so it was cool.
Nice. That's really cool. One thing that you were saying earlier that I wanted to ask about. So, like, I guess the kind of the spoken word poetry that you've been talking about. Am I right in thinking that normally, like, people are like being like very authentic and honest when they're speaking out their poetry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering, like, when you're doing either writing your poetry or reading your poetry, is there any difference to how you approach it or how you feel or who you are when you're doing that compared to when you're studying your degree?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question. Well, I think when I'm writing poetry for me, like it isn't a commission piece, or when it's just for me, when I want to vent a bit, then
Commission piece. Sorry, no. Fair.
when it's for me, like I want to vent, I think that's the biggest thing. When I want to vent, but I don't really want to talk to anyone about it, but I just want to let it out.
Yeah, of course.
It's often from.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. It's cool. It's good. Fair enough. Like,
it's often from a place of like deep emotion.
Yeah.
But look, I'll get to the commission piece. You'll see why.
Okay.
So when it comes from a place of like, I want to talk about something that's close to me, whether I'm upset about something or anything like that, it's written almost as like it's a vent, really. I'm not writing to write poetry out of it, but then when I come to revisit it, then that's when it starts to form into something different. Now, commission pieces, whether it's for architecture or whether it's for any other institute or any body, it really depends on what they're asking for. So, for example, I did some writing for Heatherwick Studios, which is an architecture firm, and they're doing like a whole humanized campaign. So there was a book called like Humanize, and it was all about understanding how architecture can be more humanistic, basically. And my job was to sort of read the book, but then also to read about, to like understand the public perspective on the book. And that was their aim. That's what they asked from me. So to understand the public aspect of it. The same thing I wrote for another magazine, but oftentimes they ask for your raw and unfiltered opinion. And I say to them, this is exactly what I'm going to give you. If you don't like what I write, don't publish it, but I'm not going to change my writing because you want a certain avenue. You want me to be honest, I'm going to be honest. If I do or don't like certain parts. And that's one way, poetry and writing, so it's a bit of both. But when it comes to an experience, so which will like segue quite nicely into this poem that I have in front of me, so The Wishing Well. This poem is different in the way because it was interesting to write actually because I had to go back to a feeling that I started off with. So often I write poetry when that feeling is present. Yeah. But this was like I had to sort of remember how that felt, which I can assume like if I were to write this poem, we'd never know. But if I were to write this poem when I first joined uni and then right at the end of uni, it'd be very different poems, but they show still different aspects of emotion. So oftentimes when I write poetry, it's an active feeling. Or it comes from a place, kind of like we were discussing right at the beginning when we were saying, when you feel like it, you write, you know? Like, that. And I think my best pieces of poetry come from that. Like, they come from a place of, I need to write. But when it comes from a commission piece or a piece where I've asked to be write about something, same thing goes for art as well. Like, when I do, painting pieces or stuff like that, it comes from a place that you have to kind of go back in time to unlock how you felt. And ultimately, it will change. But it's also a nice reflection part of it.
Interesting, yeah. Nice. That is really interesting. But I think, because a lot of prospective students watch the podcast and they're going to go on to degrees and study and they do their degree. And you were saying, I'm just really interested by how you were saying people have their degree and then they have their side hustle, creative hobbies. And I think I was wondering, what do you think about this idea hypothetically these two different people, so one person studying a degree and they have a side hobby of writing poetry and they keep these two lives distinct, separate, and they're kind of two different people in that, when they're writing their poetry, they're very honest, authentic, and raw, and there's no filter. But whereas like when they're studying, they've like I know they've got a job to do. They want to get a certain grade. They want to achieve these certain things that will get them a good grade and impress their tutor, etc. And kind of like play towards the academic rules of success. And so there's that one person, and I was wondering, is it possible for this second person where they have their side hobby of like whether it's writing poetry or musician or writing sport, whatever, where they're very honest, authentic, they just enjoy it genuinely. Can you also be like that when you're going to the library, reading books, writing your essay, going to the lectures, talking in supervisions? Can you also do the academic life as an undergrad very honestly, authentically, and not because you're wanting to get a first, but because you yourself believe in what you're doing and you doing it because you want to? Like, is that possible as a to put that into your subject?
I think so, but I think there's different points I was trying to remember as you were speaking, but I'm sure they'll come if they're important. Is what I tell myself. I think you can do that, but I think there's a difference between the goal you set yourself. So if you come into university and you say like, oh, I'm at Cambridge here, like, and I want to get a first when I graduate, that's your goal. Then the way in which you act will ensure that goal happens. But the latter, where you're talking about a hypothetical student that sort of approaches their degree in a candid and open, raw way, I think through that's a long-term personality or sort of like way of acting that will help you in the long term. Hence why I would like to say I try and like do that as well. Because through that way and through learning genuinely and openly and being yourself when learning, you'll figure out what you really like and what you don't like. And you'll be in a position within your profession or within your degree to figure out, okay, this is a niche that I really enjoy, or this is a niche I don't enjoy. Instead of just basing it off the fact, oh, I need to get a good mark in this paper to get a first. If that's your goal, fair. That can be your goal, and you can go through your degree in that way. But in being open-minded and trying to figure out, okay, I want to look in the long term. I want to see, A, if you're trying to figure out if you still want to go down this degree or in this profession, but also B, figuring out what works for you. Like if you enjoy exploring and research into that aspect and you genuinely enjoy it, not just because your supervisor or your tutors told you to go and explore it, but you find yourself in the library exploring into a certain element, then take it as a note to yourself that you enjoy that bit and that you can go off and explore your degree in that way. Most degrees, I'd like to say, are pretty flexible. Like if you like something, there will be moments where you can explore that further, particularly in architecture. Like I'm interested in participatory design. If I didn't at the beginning say, oh, this is what I'm exploring in, and sort of go down that whilst slightly maybe leaving other topics empty, then I wouldn't have known that was a topic that I was really interested in. The same way I wouldn't have figured out if that was something for me. So I think there will always come sacrifice within your degree, and that's whether it is entirely up to your goals and what you want to achieve through it. If you want to achieve a first, but I think you can also do both. It isn't mutually exclusive. If you want to explore, I think that's how you probably get a first, is how you're genuinely passionate and interested in your subject.
It shows through.
Exactly, and it shows through your work ethic and that you want to work instead of being like, oh, I've got to do this to get a good grade. It's you have a completely different mindset on your work, which makes it more enjoyable.
I guess the work comes through like genuinely original if it comes from like a place where you've really thought it through rather than trying to make it look impressive.
Exactly.
Nice. Yeah, because I mean, it is a really tough thing to achieve because the deadlines come quick, and you got to meet the deadlines, and sometimes you just have to get something onto paper that's good enough and move on.
It's true.
Like it's hard to always give your best work each time, but I think I want to show for the prospective students watching that it is possible. they don't like your what you really like, your side pastime or your side hustle or what you really enjoy and your academics don't have to be separate. Like they can be one. Like I knew one maths student who he loved his degree, he loved maths, he did more modules than he needed to, and then his spare time he did coding. And some of his modules were coding, so there was none of us knew whether he was taking a break or if he was studying, and he always had a smile on his face.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's always a way. If someone says to you in the degree or just generally in life, oh, like you should prioritize one or prioritize either or, like you can't do it all. Yes and no. Like it also depends what type of person you are as well. So if someone says you can't do it, it's probably because they couldn't do it and they don't think you can. So just continue what you're doing because it's clearly working in a respect. And if you're in Cambridge, then you've already kind of you've made it in a way, but it's not to say you have to sacrifice all, your sport ventures, everything else that you love. You still have the space, and if anything, Cambridge is the place for it. Like you still have flexibility to explore them further and to become better in both your degree and also what you love. Nice.
So the next thing that we have is so for Trinity Hall's 675th anniversary campaign, for which if the viewers don't know, Trinity Hall are running a campaign for their 675th anniversary. You can find information in the caption below. There's a variety of plans and causes that the college are raising money for. So please do check that out if you're interested. And for the campaign, you've written the college a poem. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, the poem's called The Wishing Well. I brought it up earlier on in the conversation that we were having, but it was fundamentally a piece talking about my experience at Trinity Hall and what it meant to me and the different sort of like little parts of my experience that were really important to me or memorable to me as part of sort of celebrate this monumental anniversary.
Nice. Yeah, and like the poem, like it goes through like life at uni, your experiences. So like I think it'd be really interesting for the prospective students to hear your poem if you're willing to read it.
Yeah, sure. Let me drink some water. So it's nice and right. Okay. Is it okay if I do it from here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Cool. So it's called The Wishing Well. I think my theme, so the theme I had below it was believe, belong, and become.
Yeah.
So that was something that Trinity Hall had sort of given to me as the...
those are the themes for the campaign.
Yeah. So that was something that they were like, oh, if this can be something that you talk about. It can be one or the other. And I was like, cool, I got you, don't worry. So it's called The Wishing Well. To be young and to believe is a difficult thing. You see, belief is kind of like a wishing well. The deeper you look in, the more lost you get. But stepping back will allow you to see the bed of shine, the glimmer of coins resting at the bottom. Moments of hope all arranged beautifully, so we can understand how hope is really born. And how we are born into dreamers, trailblazers, and world changers. And how one person can change your entire life. Flip it like a coin. Heads up, your whole life is about to change. My teacher had done that for me. Changed my life when she mentioned Trinity Hall, Cambridge. You see, this was never meant to be in my story. I hadn't written my happily ever after yet. But I knew it would be something cool, of course. Something rewarding. Why? It's because my parents coming from opposite ends of the world, meeting and then leaving home, only to move to a foreign land and learn how to speak a language that lodges in their throats, just so the language could roll off our tongues like butter on a hot knife. So we can speak loud enough for people in the room to hear us, to actually listen to what is being said. So we spoke and people heard. But I would never imagine the next part of my story, because when I turned the page, the writing was already there, And the more I read it, the more I was convinced of my story. So you know what? I jumped in. I jumped in a book head first, and I found myself surrounded by century-old stone in a room that was not my own, but still kind of felt a bit like home, you know? With friends for neighbours and teachers who really care about you. We fit like a glove, dubbed as the friendliest college, and just walking through the Porter's Lodge will prove that, with smiles as wide as the mathematical bridge and hearts as big as Latham Lawn. So, when I look back at my story now, I smile, a soft, mellow-lipped curl, in disbelief that my story is actually quite interesting, that my many coins sitting at the bottom of the wishing well arranged my life story, decorating an image of Trinity Hall, my home away from home, a way to start believing in the bed of shine.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Oh, it's really good, given that like you did it because someone asked you to make it, like it was commissioned.
Yeah.
No, could you explain for the viewers who are like interested in writing poetry and like how was the writing process?
I think the key part is to tap into an emotion. I think that's where the most candid and honest poetry comes from, is when you have an emotion. So when writing this poem, I was trying to think back to my first experiences in Freshers. And Freshers is such a crazy time because you're doing so much and you're trying to meet loads of different people. And I was really trying to hone in on like what it was that I was experiencing. When I wasn't around friends, when I was in my room, in my college room, trying to decorate and trying to make it homely, what was the feeling that I was feeling? And it was a mixture between fear of being away from home, fear of not really knowing anyone here, but also more than the feeling of fear was excitement. It was like this exciting opportunity that I had in my hands, and what I make of it will determine where I go. Because you hear about Cambridge, especially like where I grew up, you hear about Cambridge being such a big thing. Even when I go home, my neighbours are like, "Oh, how's Cambridge going?" You know, it's a big thing. So when coming, I was nervous, but I was more excited about the opportunity that I had here to make it something beautiful and to make it something amazing. So in writing poetry, I think, especially when it's spoken in this manner, to write it or to remember a feeling that was part of it or part of your experience. And I think it's quite beautiful in the way, because I was writing about my experience at Trinity Hall. It wasn't like my experience at another college, because that'd be totally detached. But it's a college that I applied to and I got here. So it has a very personal and almost emotional connection that I have with this poem.
Nice. Yeah. So like, even though it was asked of you, you looked into your own personal experiences, so like it was still like written in like a honest way. In terms of like this, we won't spend too much time on the style, but it's also interesting because like some people, like when they write poetry, they want to like stick to English verse and like to certain like rhymes and meters. Am I right in thinking that this is like free verse?
Yeah, this has, if you analyze this in a class, it has not much in that way. But it's because in the way I write my poetry, I often speak it. So when I'm passionate or when I'm thinking about something, I usually speak my poetry out loud, and I often leave like the voice recorder on to because sometimes I surprise myself and I capture cool lines. I'm like, wow, what was that line again? So that's the way I write it, is I almost dictate it before I even put it pen to paper. So it's really written from the heart. It isn't. I think there's a beauty in writing in a certain manner, whether it's academic poetry or writing with a certain rule. But I think for me, particularly when it's personal poetry, I think in a way it becomes limiting, because you're like, oh, I want to write it this way, but it doesn't match with this style of writing, and then it almost feels like a wall that you keep running into. But with a lot of my poetry, actually, it's written in a very free-flowing, open way.
Nice. I mean, I think there's a lot. I don't know, to say that there's in a class there's not much to be said about it. I don't think that's true. But I see what you mean in that it doesn't follow the conventional English norms. But in that sense, like, it's still very cool people feel something when they hear it. There's like a melody to it, and then you're like, hang on, wait, it doesn't follow any of the, and then there's something else must be happening there, that's new and different. And then hearing from how you wrote it, it was like genuine as well, not like it wasn't created in a contrived manner, which is really cool. I guess like those who do really like English first, like a perfect marriage is when it's written in a very authentic, emotional way, and making the best out of the rules. But I mean, yeah, not many people are doing that these days. But it doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile pursuit. Given that you studied and you're studying architecture and not something like English, do you think like when it comes to creative writing and poetry and the spoken poetry, does that put you in a disadvantaged position or an advantaged position or neither?
I think it's an advantageous position because I think when you study the subject, because I was very close actually to studying English at university. A lot changed in my life and I was like, no. Because I did English A-level and I loved it. But what I didn't like about it was all the rules I had to follow. And I had to say, like, I had to write in a certain way to get marks. And I didn't like the way I wrote, but it would get me marks. And it was almost like a relationship I was trying to balance with myself. As I love this subject, but do I love it enough to sacrifice what I like, aspects that I love about it? So I had a really, really great conversation with my English teacher at the time about it. But anyways.
No. What was that conversation?
Anyways, moving swiftly on. No, the conversation was because I think in school, this term I heard the first of was like, I was a jack of all trades kind of thing. That was the first time I heard of that phrase. And so I was interested in loads of things. And I loved them deeply. I was very passionate about them. English was up there with one of them, and I remember sitting with my teacher and saying like, Miss, I don't know what to do, like I'm stuck, like I love art, I love English, I love like sociology. And there was a time where I was talking to my teacher about like doing dual courses, like 2 courses at once or 2 degrees at once, because I actually couldn't choose. And she sat me down and she was like, Sam, you've got to remember or think about what it is that you want, not what you want for others or not what people want for you, but what is it that you want? And also think about a subject that can almost encapsulate them all. And then that's when I stumbled upon architecture. Architecture is really beautiful. Something that I mentioned in the last podcast is that me and my friends, we joke because architects can have conversations with anyone because we study bits of every one subject, which is beautiful in a way that I found my balance. But when I was at that age, like A-level time, when I was trying to figure out what to do, it was really stressful because I was like, I want to make the right decision, but I don't know what that right decision is. So yeah, sitting down with my teacher and having that conversation was really, really valuable. It helped me to like direct where I wanted to go. Because a lot of the time my parents would support whatever subject I took, but they wanted it to be the subject I enjoyed, but I enjoyed all my subjects. So it was really, really difficult to make that decision.
Nice. That's really cool. One thing we were mentioning before, before the podcast, was how if you don't study humanities, then you can always creatively write on your own terms rather than churn out an essay. But then equally, you'd imagine like writing lots of essays would give you a lot of practice. So it's probably, I'd imagine it's up for the prospective students watching, working out what they want, what's best for them. Exactly. In terms of what they want to take out from the course. Do they feel like a certain course is going to be liberating and enable them to do what they want, or do they find it restrictive? And only having a thorough look at the courses and what's on offer, or and that's also a big question that comes on whether thinking about Cambridge and thinking about universities that doesn't have as much workload. I think it's kind of ignored. I know when people think about Oxford or Cambridge, they think, oh yeah, well, obviously if I got an offer from Oxford or Cambridge, I'll take it, without really thinking, well, maybe we should look at the course and look at the courses elsewhere, and actually which courses
best suit to you,
to get the best out of yourself.
Totally.
And I think if you come in knowing that you thought it through, then like once you're here and you're doing it, then you know like you're doing it with a bit more like conviction and belief that it was like premeditated and pre-thought out and something that you've like chosen for yourself rather than like doing it for the name.
100%. You're just like more ready for it. Because I think I gave some advice to my old art teacher. I love my old art teacher, Miss Hill, if you're watching this, and Miss Khan. Thank you for everything. Oh. But they reached out to ask if, well, A, it was a catch up, but also B, it was like, we've got some A-level art students and he was interested in architecture and wanted some advice. I said, sure, like we can hop on a call to talk about it. And I gave him all the information, just all the positives and all the negatives, everything up and down about architecture that you need to know about. And he was also like, oh, I'm interested in like linguistics or languages. And I said, yeah, you can also go for that. Like I said, as much as I love architecture, if it isn't for you, I'm not going to advocate it for you. The same way if I love Cambridge and I love everything that I've learned from it, but I can admit also it's not for everyone. And I think it's about trying to be brutally honest with yourself, what's good for you, not what's good for the name, good that your parents want you to do it, your friends want you to do it. It's about you, really. So it was interesting having that conversation. It made me feel like I was like, it didn't make me feel old, but it definitely made me feel like, where's all the time gone? Because I remember when I was in his position and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. But yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And I hope I imagine like a lot of prospective students that listen to this will find like these stories like from your teachers and from yourself helpful when they're making their own decisions. I think one thing that you said earlier about how, you know, sometimes when people tell you can't do something, it's normally because they feel like they can't do it themselves. It's like it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from like a really good film, The Pursuit of Happiness, the Will Smith and Jaden Smith one. That's a really good scene, really good message, and is really applicable for Cambridge applications. 'Cause you do like sometimes when you tell someone, oh, like I'm thinking about applying to Cambridge, and then some people are like really supportive, and some people won't be supportive and will like be quite unkind and discouraging, and a lot about applying to Cambridge and doing well at the university and doing well afterwards is surrounding yourself with people who are supportive.
100%, yeah.
And I imagine something like with reading poetry out loud. Reading poetry out loud is one of those things where you really find out who your friends are.
100%. It's hit and miss. It's hit and miss. But I think that's a beautiful thing that poetry has given to me is confidence. Not that I didn't have it before.
Yeah.
I think everyone has confidence within themselves, but it's about how you unlock it. And poetry was my vessel in how I could unlock it. But loads of people have different vessels, and you've got to figure out which is yours. Because I totally disagree when people say, oh, like, so-and-so is not very confident or doesn't have confidence. Everyone has confidence, but it's about nurturing that to almost like, however you feel best for it to come out. It's through my poetry. It can be through sports. It can be through a certain like task that you were given in school. It can be through different like levels of communication. It can be through anything. But as long as you find what your niche is, everyone has confidence. I really dislike when people say like, oh, so-and-so doesn't have confidence or has really low self-esteem. People aren't born with low self-esteem. That's a socially kind of put on thing.
Yeah.
It's
like
what happens around you.
Yeah, you kind of like you've kind of written that person off when you say that.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not good
because
at
like
all.
it's not given like it's not being open to the chance that might change.
And because they end up also, we're going off on a tangent, but I think it's important because they also end up believing that in themselves, and then therefore it changes the whole trajectory of what they're planning to do, what they wanted to do. Because all you really need, like in the poem that I was saying, like you need one person to believe in you. Yeah. And at the time, I have loads of stories, but at this time, not that I didn't think I could get into Cambridge, but just Cambridge wasn't on my peripheral because I was thinking about other things. I wasn't thinking about Cambridge. And a teacher had just mentioned it in passing. It wasn't even like we had a sit-down conversation to speak about it. She was like, oh, what about Cambridge? You got the
She knew what she did.
yeah. you got the grades to do that. I said, yeah. Yeah. And then I started to consider it, and I did research on my own, but my teacher had dropped that seed in me to think about it. If she didn't tell me to think about it, like I said, it wouldn't even cross my mind. We would have been having this chat.
Shout out to those teachers.
So thank you to Miss Begum for telling me about that, and for giving me confidence. And it's just a bit of self-belief, really, just belief that someone else. I think there's a difference, because with teachers, they're paid to teach you. They're not paid, and this is what stuck out to me. They're not paid to believe in you or to go that extra mile. Yeah. But because they did, and I think there was a difference at the time, because my parents, I love my parents and my brother, they were always so supportive, and still to this day, of everything that I do. And whatever I do, they're always my main fans that are there, which I totally respect, and I'm very blessed to have them. But I think it was so different in school to have a teacher, someone that you don't know on a personal level, believe in you. That was a different type of superpower. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah. This is a bit of a tangent. Okay. But I was in a similar situation as well. Because I applied to Oxford twice. I didn't get in the first time. And I was thinking of taking a year out and applying a second time. And a few of my friends were really discouraging, kind of describing me as a dropout, which was quite harsh.
Yeah, it's not nice at all. No. I hope they're not your friends anymore. Hope they're off the list. Okay.
And then, but it was my form tutor. He was just a very neutral way. He said, "Oh well, someone else has decided that they're going to reapply." This was on the day that I found out, and he said, "Yeah, someone else has decided they're going to reapply." Kind of subtly saying us,
what's your plan? Yeah.
And he always believed in me. He was always in favour, and it worked out. And I think just to kind of finish that story, it was some advice from a friend who did believe in me from the beginning. He said something like, "Oh, Simon, you've always wanted to travel. You've never really been on a holiday growing up. But you could I had an offer to Bath." He said, you could call Bath, see, and this is after I've got my grades.
Yeah.
So you could call Bath and see if you were to reapply, would you get in? And if they say if they say yes, or you're most likely to, if these are your grades, you could get a job, work with the money that you've earned, go travelling, which is always what you want to do, give Oxford another go.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, you can just go to Bath next year.
Exactly, yeah.
Really clutch advice.
Yeah, it's a good friend. He's got A, B, C, and D plan. He's got it. That's great.
And you're right in saying that you need those people who are in your corner.
100%.
For those moments where you're doubting yourself. Lastly, on the poem, there was a really cool bit I wanted to talk about. It was when you were saying, don't need to read it because I'm It was when you were saying about how the English language gets stuck on your your parents' throats, but for you it rolls off your tongue, like a play talking about first generation, second generation. I mean, something that I directly when I was reading that I could directly relate to that. Was wondering I was wondering in Cambridge and in the UK, being second generation, but I know speaking in the same way as, or very similar way as people who are white British. Do you feel like an outsider in the UK or Cambridge, or do you feel synonymous with the community?
In what way? As in, do I? Because I don't. Just explain it again for me.
Do you feel like? Do you feel like you fit in with the student body in Cambridge, or fit in the UK? So for example, for me, born in Britain, British passport. This is just me personally. I don't want to speak for you, of course. But like, so at university, I didn't really think too much about ethnicity. So it very much felt like I was with everyone, and I was very confident and like comfortable in my skin. So it just worked out well. Didn't really ask too many questions. But I guess within the UK in a broader sense, I mean, on paper and as a passport, I'm British, but like I would always feel like slightly different to, or like not completely, slightly different to those who are white British and have a heritage that's been England's the whole time. But I mean, I very much really embrace that history and think about like genetically where my ancestors would have been, and just was curious about more, at least more specifically in Cambridge. Have you felt has fitting in ever been an issue?
I see. Not really. No, I think.
Fair face.
I think it's because when growing up, yes,
Okay.
loads of conflict within myself, but also because I was trying to figure out who I was. Because
in East London.
In East London, yeah. Because I think me and my brother, it was quite rare. Like no one else in our school was of mixed heritage. Like it was just us.
I see. Okay.
So and especially when you're young, like you've got no filter, so you're just asking questions. And I think when I was younger, I really didn't like people that asked me the question. Now I don't mind it too much, but definitely when I was younger, I hated people asking me like, oh, between like your Moroccan and Thai heritage, like which is best, like which are you gonna pick? And I was like, it's like between my parents, who am I gonna pick? Like what kind of question is that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I used to feel when I was younger offended by that question, because I'm like, it's like choosing between your parents. How can I choose between and I wrote a poem about this actually. It was like It was called Roots, because I was always so frustrated when people would ask me that question, or they'd ask me a question like, what's your favorite food, like you prefer Thai or Moroccan food? Like it like really simple questions. But to me, I always read it in a different way, like, oh, you want me to be one thing. You want me to be either Thai or Moroccan. I was born in Thailand, and so was my brother, but we moved to the UK when we were very, very young. So in the same boat as you, like we have British passports and things like that. But always, I think because I was always reminded of it growing up, like we were always different. And in a way, all those questions, also like bullying came into it as well, but all of that helped shape me being comfortable in who I was, because I was also like almost forced in a way to be comfortable with who I was. And looking back at it now, I think it was a good thing, because I wouldn't have, if those questions weren't asked and if people didn't pick and prod and try and sort of figure us out. I can't really speak for my brother, but for me, it really helped me to become more confident in who I am as a person. So if you ask me, like a lot of the time, even when I came to Cambridge very early on, but also before I came to Cambridge, the first question people would ask me, like after "How are you?" is like, "Oh, where are you from?" Which was always very interesting to me, because I was like, why is that so important? But you know, before I don't know what I used to say, but now I say like guess, because I'm interested in what people say, because I've definitely had every ethnicity under the sun. You can't, and also I don't get offended unless you say it in an offensive way.
Yeah, of course.
How can I get offended by you calling me different like ethnicities? But if you say it in a rude and prejudicial way, of course. But so now I'm just like curious to hear what people say, really. But in Cambridge, when I came, I was very, very aware of my roots.
Nice. That's really
and cool. I held them with pride. Like if people asked me where I'm from, I would say. But if people were asking in a prejudicial way, or you got some ulterior motives going on, then I'd flip the question on you. Where do you think I'm from?
Nice. Oh, that's a good flip.
Yeah, because it's very telling what your answer will be. You know what I mean?
And if someone has that kind of agenda, then their guard's going to be up.
Yeah. So, and it's a good skill to have in Cambridge, I guess. But I think because I learned that when I was quite young. So when I came to Cambridge at older age, it kind of, I was very secure in who I was as a person, and who I am as a person. If anything, now it's a really key part of my identity and who I am as a poet, as an architect, as a person who speaks multiple languages. You know, it's a very, very important part of who I am. But yeah, with that line in the poem, I think it was reflecting on trying to embody some of my parents' struggles, or because I can only, it's something that we learned in sociology called like verstehen. It was like trying to put yourself in other people's shoes. And I carry that. I've learned that terminology once, and I've carried that throughout my whole degree, my whole life, trying to understand how other people feel. I think with my parents' experience, I can never truly do that. I can try my best to, but I can never truly give it justice because I'm not them.
So you were saying how like your experiences like in your childhood and your past has like created like your identity now.
I think it's a lot about, now I have the confidence to be who I am, and I think without all the experience that I had when I was younger, I wouldn't have been so confident. So it's really, really about, and if I would leave with any sort of like lasting advice, would be to have confidence in who you are, like really and truly. And I think that's really hard because along the way, it's so normal to feel anxious and to be scared and to be insecure about certain things in life. I think that's absolutely normal. But it's all about, like what we were saying, to surround yourself with good people that remind you of your worth and remind you of your power that you have in your knowledge, in your character, and really carrying that through.
Nice. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's really good advice. So I think this is a really cool podcast. We went on so many tangents, but I think so
many worthwhile tangents.
Yeah, I think it's when it's good content, you should keep the camera rolling.
Nice.
But so thank you, Sam, for such
a
really interesting podcast about poetry societies, and as well as students being able to do their degrees and be themselves on their own terms, which I think is really cool. And thanks for the viewers for watching, whether it's on your podcasting platform or on YouTube. We're going to be doing more podcasts focused on specific societies that Cambridge has offer, so please stay tuned. Nice.
Cool. For a second, when you asked your question, I was like,